The topic of this video is Treasury inflation protected securities, which I will just abbreviate to TIPS. I use a ladder approach to buying TIPS in my Roth IRA accounts. I have two maturing on January 15, 2025 and four on April 15, 2025. So I'm in the process of replacing those with purchases before those mature. While the original principal amount of a tip at auction would be $1,000 per bond, the principal amount has increased over time as inflation adjustments add to the principal amount. If the auction is a reopening of a prior auction, the principal amount would be increased by CPI since the original issuance. I will be buying one tip at the upcoming 10-year auction next Thursday, November 21. I've already placed an order in my Fidelity Roth IRA since that is the one that has the lowest money market yield on a sweep account. Currently at 4.31%, down from 4.94% on September 19, 2024. That downward movement is a result of the Fed rate cuts. The money market funds will adjust their yields very quickly to changes in the federal funds rate. I also bought last week a tip in the secondary market that filled a gap in my Roth IRA tip ladders. That one matures on October 15, 2027 and has a 1.625% coupon. The bond was originally a 5-year tip sold at auction with a dated date of October 15, 2022. The real yield at my purchase price was 1.733%. Real yield for a tip is just the yield above the CPI inflation rate. I paid 99.965 with an inflation factor of 1.06365, which is the amount that increases the principal amount to account for inflation since the original issuance, and the price is increased by that inflation adjustment to 106.041. The inflation factor will reflect the CPI adjustment through the settlement date, which is 11/18/2024. Starting on Tuesday, November 19th, I will receive the inflation increases to the principal amount. For one bond with the inflation adjustment to the original principal amount, that has to be paid to the seller, brings the total principal amount of, which will be my cost basis, original cost basis, and the tip that I purchased in the secondary market to $1,060.41. As I said, I have to, for a purchase in the secondary market, I have to compensate the buyer for the inflation accretion to the principal amount since the I-bond was, since the tip was originally purchased, which that would start in October 2022. As for the 10-year tip auction, this will be a reopening of one that was sold in mid-July. So there will be some inflation accretion to the principal amount. The coupon for the tip auction in July that is being reopened for the upcoming auction is 1.875%. Since this is a reopening auction, the term is not 10 years, but 9 years and 8 months with a maturity in July 2034. Fidelity estimates the real yield to be 2.099%. That's about where the real yield closed. last Friday for a 10-year tip. There may be some change between now and the Thursday auction. The price will be adjusted somewhat for an inflation factor since the original issuance. The third-party price as of last Friday that Fidelity has for this vintage tip was 97.957 as of 11/15. Fidelity's estimate of the inflation-adjusted price is 98.347. That would be an additional amount added to adjust the original principal amount by CPI inflation since the tip was originally issued in July, which has been modest. The principal amount is adjusted by inflation, which is why they're called inflation-adjusted securities. They start out with a lower coupon than the non-inflation protected securities for the same maturity. But if inflation is higher than what is the break-even inflation rate at the time of purchase, I will do better with the tip compared to the nominal Treasury purchased at the same time. If the break-even inflation is less than the break-even inflation rate at the time of purchase, I would have done better with the purchase of the nominal Treasury maturing at the same time. As I said, the inflation adjusted price is calculated by using the inflation factor and multiplying that number by the price paid. Once the tip is issued with a coupon and a real yield, the value in the secondary market will fluctuate based on a number of factors. One of those factors which will influence the tip pricing is changes in the nominal yields for non-inflation protected treasuries with the same maturities. On September 15, 2024, the 10-year Treasury non-inflation protected security was at a 4.23% yield, and the 10-year tip real yield was at 1.96%. The break-even inflation rate is the difference between those two yields. On November 15, 2024, the nominal 10-year Treasury was at 4.4%. That's up 17 basis points from mid-July. And the real yield on the tip had increased to 2.10%, and that's up 14 basis points from where it was on July 15, 2024. The only way for a tip bought with a 9.196 real yield to adjust to the current real yield of 2.1% will be to go down in price until the real yield equals 2.1%. That's the reason you can get fluctuations in the price of a tip based on just the movement and the non-inflation protected security yield from the same maturity. The loss in value due to nominal interest rates moving higher after purchase of a tip at auction can generate a loss when sold prior to maturity with or without the inflation adjustments to the principal amount, and the amount will depend on the severity of the tip price change. I will buy one or two of the 5-year tip at the next auction on Thursday, December 19th, 2024, and one or more in the secondary market before year-end to fill gaps in my ladder. For Treasury tip purchases that I've been making over the past several years, I will hold them to maturity. I was in the mode of trading tips, particularly the long-dated ones that were bought in the secondary market. I would sell them at profits, and the largest profit I ever made was over $800 on 3 tips. That when I sold the tip that had a 1.875% coupon that was bought at auction, the buyer was paying a price that produced a negative real yield of almost 1%, so I made almost $800 on that one. But I've quit trading them and have focused more on shorter term and intermediate term tips purchased in the Treasury market, in the Treasury secondary market or at auction that I can feel comfortable holding to maturity, and that reduces my risk of actually losing money on the principal amount due to inflation changes and changes in the real yields.